Chapter 3 of The Bat. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Alan Winterroud. The Bat by Mary Roberts Reinhardt. Chapter 3. Pistol Practice. She knew who it was, of course. The Bat. No doubt of it. And yet, did the Bat ever threaten before he struck? She could not remember. But it didn't matter. The Bat was unprecedented, unique. At any rate, bat or no bat, she must think out a course of action. The defection of cook and housemaid left her alone in the house with Lizzie and Billy, and Dale, of course, if Dale returned. Two old women, a young girl, and a Japanese butler to face the most dangerous criminal in America, she thought grimly. And yet, one couldn't be sure. The threatening letter might only be a joke, a letter from a crank, after all. Still, she must take precautions, look for aid somewhere, but where could she look for aid? She ran over in her mind the new acquaintances she had made since she moved to the country. There was Dr. Wells, the local physician, who had joked with her about moving into the Bat's home territory. He seemed an intelligent man, but she knew him only slightly. She couldn't call a busy doctor away from his patients to investigate something which might only prove to be a mare's nest. The boys Dale had met at the country club, huh, she sniffed. I'd rather trust my gumption than any of theirs. The logical person to call on, of course, was Richard Fleming, Courtleigh Fleming's nephew and heir, who had rented her the house. He lived at the country club. She could probably reach him now. She was just on the point of doing so when she decided against it, partly from delicacy, partly from an indefinable feeling that he would not be of much help. Besides, she thought sturdily, it's my house now, not his. He didn't guarantee burglar protection in the lease. As for the local police, her independence revolted at summoning them. They would bombard her with ponderous questions and undoubtedly think she was merely a nervous old spinster. If it was just me, she thought, I swear I wouldn't say a word to anybody, and if the Bat flew in he mightn't find it so easy to fly out again, if I'm 65 and never shot a burglar in my life. But there's Dale and Lizzie. I've got to be fair to them. For a moment she felt very helpless, very much alone. Then her courage returned. Pshaw, Cornelia, if you have got to get help, get the help you want and hang the consequences, she adjured herself. You've always hankered to see a first-class detective do his detecting. Well, get one, or decide to do the job yourself. I bet you could at that. She tiptoed to the main door of the living room and closed it cautiously, smiling as she did so. Lizzie might be about, and Lizzie would promptly go into hysterics if she got an inkling of her mistress's present intentions. Then she went to the city telephone and asked for long distance. When she had finished her telephoning, she looked at once relieved and a little naughty, like a demure child who has carried out some piece of innocent mischief unobserved. My stars, she muttered to herself. You can never tell what you can do till you try. Then she sat down again and tried to think of other measures of defense. Now, if I were the Bat, or any criminal, she mused, how would I get into this house? Well, that's it. I might get in most any way, it's so big and rambling. All the grounds you want to lurk in, too. It'd take a company of police to shut them off. Then there's the house itself. Let's see, 3rd floor, trunk room, servant's room. Couldn't get in there very well except with a pretty long ladder. That's all right. 2nd floor? Well, I suppose a man could get into my bedroom from the porch if he were an acrobat, but he'd need to be a very good acrobat, and there's no use borrowing trouble. Downstairs is the problem, Cornelia. Downstairs is the problem. Take this room now. She rose and examined it carefully. There's the door over there on the right that leads into the billiard room. There's this door over here that leads into the hall. Then there's that other door by the alcove, and all those French windows. Whew! She shook her head. It was true. The room in which she stood, while comfortable and charming, seemed unusually accessible to the night prowler. A row of French windows at the rear gave upon a little terrace. Below the terrace, the drive curved about and beneath the billiard room window in a hairpin loop, drawing up again at the main entrance on the other side of the house. At the left of the French windows, if one faced the terrace, as Miss Cornelia was doing, was the alcove door of which she spoke. When open, it disclosed a little alcove almost entirely devoted to the foot of a flight of stairs that gave direct access to the upper regions of the house. The alcove itself opened on one side upon the terrace, and upon the other into a large butler's pantry. The arrangement was obviously designed so that, if necessary, one could pass directly from the terrace to the downstairs servants' quarters, or the second floor of the house, without going through the living room, and so that trays could be carried up from the pantry by the side stairs without using the main staircase. The middle pair of French windows were open, forming a double door. Miss Cornelia went over to them, shut them, tried the locks. Huh! Flimsy enough, she thought. Then she turned toward the billiard room. The billiard room, as has been said, was the last room to the right in the main wing of the house. A single door led to it from the living room. Miss Cornelia passed through this door, glanced about the billiard room, noting that most of its windows were too high from the ground to greatly encourage a marauder. She locked the only one that seemed to her particularly tempting, the billiard room window on the terrace side of the house. Then she returned to the living room and again considered her defenses. 3 points of access from the terrace to the house: the door that led into the alcove, the French windows of the living room, the billiard room window. On the other side of the house there was the main entrance, the porch, the library, and dining room windows. The main entrance led into a hall living room, and the main door of the living room was on the right as one entered. The dining room and library on the left, main staircase in front. My mind is starting to go round like a pinwheel, thinking of all those windows and doors, she murmured to herself. She sat down once more, and taking a pencil and a piece of paper, drew a plan of the lower floor of the house. And now I've studied it, she thought after a while, I'm no further than if I hadn't. As far as I can figure out, there are so many ways for a clever man to get into this house that I'd have to be a couple of Siamese twins to watch it properly. The next house I rent in the country, she decided, just isn't going to have any windows and doors, or I'll know the reason why. But of course she was not entirely shut off from the world, even if the worst developed. She considered the telephone instruments on a table near the wall, one the general phone, the other connecting a house line which also connected with the garage and the greenhouses. The garage would not be helpful, since Slocum, her chauffeur for many years, had gone back to England for a visit. Dale had been driving the car, but with an able-bodied man in the gardener's house. She pulled herself together with a jerk. Cornelia Van Gorder, you're going to go crazy before nightfall if you don't take hold of yourself. What you need is lunch, and a nap in the afternoon if you can make yourself take it. You'd better look up that revolver of yours, too, that you bought when you thought you were going to take a trip to China. You've never fired it off yet, but you've got to sometime today. There's no other way of telling if it will work. You can shut your eyes when you do it. No, you can't either. That's silly. Call you a spirited old lady, do they? Well, you had never had a better time to show your spirit than now. And Miss Van Gorder, sighing, left the living room to reach the kitchen just in time to calm a heated argument between Lizzie and Billy on the relative merits of Japanese and Irish-American cooking. Dale Gordon, taxiing up from the 2 o'clock train some time later, to her surprise discovered the front door locked, and rang for some time before she could get an answer. At last Billy appeared, white-coated, with an inscrutable expression on his face. "Will you take my bag, Billy? Thanks. Where is Miss Van Gorder? Taking a nap?" "No," said Billy succinctly. "She take no nap. She out in shrubbery shotting." Dale stared at him incredulously. "Shooting, Billy?" "Yes, ma'am. At least, she not shoot yet, but she say she going to soon." "But good heavens, Billy, shooting what?" "Shotting pistol," said Billy, his yellow mask of a face preserving its impish repose. He waved his hand. "You go shrubbery, you see." The scene that met Dale's eyes when she finally found the shrubbery was indeed a singular one. Miss Van Gorder, her back firmly planted against the trunk of a large elm tree, and an expression of ineffable distaste on her features, was holding out a blunt, deadly-looking revolver at arm's length. Its muzzle wavered, now pointing at the ground, now at the sky. Behind the tree Lizzie